Let's complete a new creative practice for 100 days in a new journal and a new art journal. We are going to be working from Suleika Jaouad's book, The Book of Alchemy. And this is an incredible book that uses 100 prompts from 100 different writers to help inspire your journaling practice. If you're new to my channel, we work through creativity and healing and mental health through journaling and intuitive art. And I talk a lot about mental health and how to utilize your creative process and journaling, specifically art journaling, to deconstruct and process immense healing. So get yourself cozy, grab your book and your journal or your journals. I'm going to be using 2 journals here, and this is your prompt. What would you write if you weren't afraid? As I mentioned, I am going to be using 2 journals for this process, one for writing and one for creating art. You could just use one journal to write and paint in. I decided I wanted to do both because I happened to just start a brand new writing journal, and I ordered some new art journals for this process specifically. And is there any better feeling than a new journal? Is there any better feeling than finishing a journal? I had not ever finished a journal in all of my 36 years of journaling. Well, 30 years of journaling, because I've been journaling since 31 years of journaling, because I've been journaling since I was 5 years old. But not consistently, and always with big, large gaps between my writing. And I used to think if it had been too long between a journal, I would have to start a new one. And so I have lots of unfinished journals out there from all the way back to 5 years old. But in the last couple of years, I specifically have focused on trying to complete journals. So I finished my very first journal that I started in 2020 during the pandemic, and then I finished in 2022. It took me 2 years to finish my first ever journal. And then I just finished my second ever journal, and that was a journal that took me 1 year and a month to finish. So I finished it in half the time it took me that first journal that I completed. So I set a timer for 10 minutes. The prompt gave us the instruction to set a timer for 10 minutes and write about what we would write about if we weren't afraid. So grab your pen, and wherever you plan to be writing, please spend 10 minutes writing about what you would write about if you weren't afraid. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I wrote about here, and that was me writing my memoir, writing a memoir and writing about my trauma and the things that I've been through and the complexity of all of it. I have a lot of boundary thoughts that come up around this, so thoughts that kind of stop me, and those include some pretty negative voices that say that I am not anyone, and why would anyone want to read my memoir? I have thoughts that tell me that people in my life would be mad at me if I told the truth about certain things. I have all of these fears wrapped up in putting out there my story and my perception of my story. And so that's what I'm writing about here. And so thinking about what you would write about if you weren't afraid, and what is causing that fear? What is preventing you from pursuing writing about that topic? Is it even just writing in general? As an artist, I spend a lot of time trying to create imagery, but I have been writing far longer than I have been painting. And so writing for me is an excellent catalyst to all the other creative processes that I go through. And in Suleika's book, she talks about how she utilizes other people's writing to prompt her to write. And not that she copies them, but that she is inspired by what she reads. And it's similar with art, right? We go and we scroll through an artist's feed, or we look through art books and we get inspired, and then we go paint. And so writing and painting, they go so well together. They go so well together. And even if you just write a paragraph, even if you just write a sentence, even if you just set your timer and you write a sentence and you let the timer run out, just allowing that pen to hit the paper, just allowing whatever it is in your head to come out, and ideally not censoring it. When we write on a computer, we have a lot of self-editing access, and so we can easily change and manipulate what it is that we said initially, where with a journal, you have to go through the shameful process of scribbling or scratching out what you write if you want to start over. And I had to put aside my shame for having to scribble on the very first page of this journal. And I think this happened with my last one too, because I put a lot of pressure on myself to journal perfectly and have it look nice. But at the end of the day, when you finish a journal, you don't notice the scratched out marks. You don't notice any of that. And if anything, it adds character and life to what it is that you're writing about. So writing about what you're afraid to write about, writing about it for 10 minutes. I let my timer go past 10 minutes because this topic allowed me to access a bit more verbiage words than I had anticipated. And so I wrote a journal entry, and then I'm going to switch over from the physical journal where I'm writing to my art journal. And like I said, it is amazing how quickly you can actually fill up a journal if you don't commit to having to do it every single day. Now, we're going to try to do 100 days here, but we're not going to do this every single day. You're going to have weeks where I'm going to not have any videos up, or I'm going to have, 7 videos up for 7 days. But the idea for this challenge that we're doing together from Suleika's book is that we do 100 days, but we do it our way, whatever that 100 days looks like for you. So we might finish this challenge in 2 years. We might finish this challenge in 100 days. I don't know. It's very unlikely that I will get to be able to sit down and do this every single day. I think my goal will be to do this at night because night tends to be the best time for me to do that. And so, picking a time, trying to pick the same place to come back to, trying to pick the same time, and then pick your cozies. I'm going to try my best to light my candle when I begin and have something to drink, have my headphones in, and I'm listening to binaural beats, which are excellent meditation sounds that access different frequencies in the brain, supposedly, and it helps you relax and focus. So I'm starting with a pen sketch, which I very rarely do, and I am just going with what comes to mind. There's a lot of pauses in this process for me. There is a lot of thinking between each movement for me, but I started right away with one of my oldest drawings. This is a drawing. Drawing these box houses is something I've been drawing since I could draw, since I could hold a pen. And I am specifically drawing my childhood home here. And the idea is that I am afraid to write about my trauma, and I'm afraid to write a memoir. And almost everything begins back here in this house. I moved into this house when I was 5 years old, and we moved from a project in the city. It was a multi-family apartment complex unit, all one-level apartments that were side by side, and I moved from there with my mom. My mom bought a house when she was very, very young with my dad, who they both had me when they were 18 and 19 years old, and so they were probably not even 25 yet when they bought this house. And this was my mom's dream, this Cape Cod-style home with a big, beautiful cherry tree in front, or is it a cherry or a pear? I think it's a cherry. And a backyard that was fenced in, and it was on the outskirts of our city, so it was in a really good neighborhood, and it was my mom's dream. It was my mom's dream. And when we moved here, I was with my sister and me, and eventually my little brother was born, and we were raised until I was 18, and I moved out and left home, actually, right before I left for college to live with my then boyfriend at the time because I had had enough. So this home is the root of everything. This place is the root of everything. And putting pen to paper, challenging my inner perfectionist. I do not love to draw. I don't love to draw. I started with drawing when I was a kid. I used to get drawing books, and I used to copy pictures and try to draw. And I told myself if I needed a reference, if I had to look at something to draw, then I wasn't an artist. And I gave up at a certain point because I didn't feel like I was impressive enough as an artist. I had to be impressive as a kid. I had a lot of value in how well I could perform and how good I could do things. I got good grades. I was a dancer. I was a popular kid, but I was extremely, extremely, extremely anxious and extremely, extremely distraught a lot of the time. I had a very rough inner world that was often ignored because of how well I did in other areas. I was told I was sensitive and that I just need to suck it up and get over it and realize that I had it so much better than anybody else or everybody else or a lot of other people, whatever my mom would say, and that I would be selfish and spoiled to not be happy with what I had. So I'm now into this tree. So in the front of the house, there's this big weeping cherry tree, or no, it's not weeping. It's just a cherry tree, but everything in that house weeps. So might as well be. And I'm creating roots that are going from the tree into the ground. And I don't really have a full image in my mind. I'm just kind of starting to outline what I remember from the house. My mom does still live there. I've been there recently. I don't go there very often. But this tree and the idea of this pink, beautiful, blooming tree that only blooms so briefly one time in the year and covers up the house. You barely see the front of the house because it's a small house and has a really small front yard right up against the road. And so this tree takes up the whole yard. And this idea of the grass is greener, or the idea that despite this big, beautiful, blooming tree, behind it was this house full of people, full of secrets, full of anger and rage. And so I started with the house. I went to this tree that kind of covers up the house, and I just allowed myself to get lost in the shapes I was making and what I was doing. Now here I got a little aggravated because technically my mom's house does not have these two windows in the front. Technically it's a Cape style house, so it doesn't have any front windows aside the two front windows on the first floor next to the front door. So what I did, instead of getting mad at myself for making the house quote unquote wrong, I decided these would just be windows into what was going on in the house, because those two front windows, if they did exist, they would have gone into my bedroom and my sister's bedroom, and what was at one time my parents' bedroom. So it was a two-bedroom house, or it is a two-bedroom house, and then there was the dining room in the front that they converted into my little brother's bedroom, and then my parents' bedroom at a certain point when my brother was born was in the basement, and my dad finished the basement for that purpose. So I did these windows kind of looking into the soul of the house and seeing into what you normally wouldn't see. And I did create kind of some tears coming down from those windows. And I started to, at a certain point, get caught up in feeling like the house didn't look good, or the sketch didn't look good. And I want to be very clear here that the idea of this challenge, the idea of this 100 days, is to not just challenge yourself to commit to journaling for 100 days, but to also challenge yourself to combat that inner critic, that inner part that says, this is trash, this is crap, this isn't a good sketch, this is not worth it, who are you, all of that. We want to combat that and say, I am me and I'm here, and it doesn't matter if this is ugly, it doesn't matter if it's technically a good drawing or a great drawing, it's just I'm here to get what's in my head and in my heart and in my body out on the page. And so I started to create some figures in the windows. And so there is myself and my siblings and my parents and these kind of lurking shadows in the home. We were always home. I mean, we went out with my mom and we did things for sure. My mom did her best to keep us busy, but it did feel like I was home far more often than I ever wanted to be. And being grounded and being punished was a big part of being home. And so you can see I did some cracks that are kind of coming out of the house and into the soil, and kind of mixing in with those roots and mixing in with this tree that's growing. And so if you're listening to me here and you're also painting, checking in with how you're feeling about what you're drawing or what you're painting, checking in with how you're feeling about what I'm talking about, seeing if there's anything that's coming up for you in terms of your own stuff. And I'm going to switch to watercolor now. I'm going to take my watercolor palette. I am pre-mixing a few colors here for the sky, but mostly I'm just going to work straight from the palette. And the idea here is to just fill in with some color. It's not to necessarily create a beautiful technical watercolor drawing. And I did not know that this pen was going to bleed. At a time, I was actually pretty sure that this was a non-bleeding pen. So at first, I was pretty frustrated because I noticed it was starting to bleed. However, it actually really worked for what I was doing for this sketch and what the look I was going for. So again, I had to allow myself to just accept that it wasn't coming out exactly the way I envisioned and work with the outcome, so that way I could keep on my flow and not feel disrupted or like I ruined it or like I messed up. And with watercolor, you really don't need a lot of pigment And you don't actually even really need a lot of color, remember. So if you're noticing that your pages are getting really saturated or really wet, you're probably using too much water or too much paint. So I'm starting now to go in with some red in the windows. And at first I was thinking I would create like rage, like the windows were red with rage, but then it started to bleed out a little and look like fire and flames. And so that felt pretty perfect. This house being on fire, of course, I would never, ever want that. I would never want this house to be on fire. However, it often felt like it was. Being on the inside of that house felt often like you were on the inside of a burning hot box. There was so much rage, there was so much anger, there was so much despair, and there was so much that was attempted to be covered up by these flowers and all of this, illusion of a happy home. I remember people would say, "Oh, your house is so cute. I love your house. It looks like a gingerbread house," because my mom would do beautiful flowers in the spring and the summer, and we would decorate it for the winter with Christmas lights. And it was always this idea that we had such a beautiful, perfect little happy home. And that was far from the case. And so the idea for me of writing about this, of putting this out into the world, is scary because there was a lot of effort generationally, ancestrally in my family to appear happier or appear more together or more nuclear than we really were. And that comes from being a product of Italian and Irish immigrants. Both of my mom's parents came over directly from the Italian diaspora, and my dad's grandparents came directly over from the Irish diaspora, I guess we'd call it as well. So the Irish-Italian idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, of appearing normal, appearing successful, appearing happy was a strong message in my home. You had to fake a smile. You had to fake that this was a happy home. We had lots of birthday parties at our house, and people really thought that we had it made. And we didn't. It wasn't all bad. I want to be clear that there were some times and chunks and periods where things were okay. There really was that happy little family for a moment. But even then, I always had this understanding or this feeling that this wasn't reality, that things were not what they seemed. And I was forced to kind of keep that inside. And when it would crack out, when I would end up in a depression or in a state of anxiety, it would always somehow turn into me being too sensitive. And it really wasn't me being too sensitive. It was me seeing what was really going on. And so as a self-taught artist, I am constantly learning from my mistakes, and I'm constantly learning from my trials and errors. So a lot of what you're seeing, like, this is the first time I've ever painted flames with watercolor. This is the first time I have attempted this type of composition. Like, there is no real forethought here or previous skill other than my other watercolor sketches that got me to this point. It is genuinely just coming back to my journal over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in order to continue to challenge myself. And so here is where, in this part of the painting, is where the bleeding pen really comes in handy. I am really in love with what happens with the ink when I start to apply color here to the earth section of the painting. It starts to bleed, and it starts to really feel like the emotion of what it felt like putting down roots from this home. And this is really a somatic moment for me while I'm doing this, because I can feel myself. I can't even describe it. There's just this feeling like, yes, this is it. This is what I wanted this to look like, without even knowing that this is what I wanted it to look like. And this might not be happening for you. Remember, again, if you're just new to this practice, you may hate what you've done and feel yourself comparing, or feel yourself already wanting to give up on the idea of doing this challenge for 100 days. But I promise you that if you stick to this, by the end of the 100 days, whether, again, it's in 2 years or in 100 days, you will feel more confident or more connected, at the very minimum, to your creative journaling practice. And as you're sitting here, I want you to check in with your inner critic, your inner jerk, the inner part of you that tells you that you're not enough, that you're not good, that you shouldn't bother. Check in. What is that part saying to you right now? Why is that part trying to prevent you from writing about, drawing about, painting about this thing that you're afraid of? And when you listen to that voice, that part, what is that part saying? What is it telling you? What are the words it's using? And when you hear the words it's using, how does it make you feel when you think about it? When you say to yourself, to that part, you're right. I am crap. I am no good at this. Do you believe that? Do you really, truly believe that you are no good at this art thing, that you have no potential to be good at this art thing? And whose voice is it? Whose voice is it that is talking to you during this creative process? Is it your voice? Is it someone else's voice? Is it your mom's voice, your dad's voice, your teacher that was really harsh on you's voice? Whose voice is it? And then just do your best to say, okay, I hear you. I hear what you're trying to say, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway, even if I'm bad, even if I'm not good, even if it's not worth it, I'm going to do it anyway, because what's the harm? You're not wasting time. And so here you see I'm doing these figures here, or painting these figures here, and it was kind of this idea of these spirits leaving the house, leaving this lineage. And I lost my aunt and my uncle, my mom's sister and brother, both in the last 2 years, very young. They're both in their 50s, early 50s. It's still really hard to believe that they're not here anymore, because we were estranged later in my life, in my adulthood. My aunt and I were estranged when I was in my late 20s. And my uncle, we were estranged when I was 21 years old, and neither by choice of me. My aunt and uncle both cut themselves off from us because of differing beliefs, differing morals, and it's a huge point of pain. And they both died very young, and I did not get a chance to speak to or see either of them before they died. This is the first time I'm even verbalizing this out loud here in this video. And so the grief from that is immense, and I don't really allow myself even now to feel it. And then there's a third smaller figure, which was from a loss that I experienced during my first and only pregnancy. And so the idea of these things, these losses, these spirits, these ghosts, the heaviness, it's tough to talk about. And I'm surprising myself at even how much emotion's coming up here. So I have these darker clouds coming in and kind of covering up the blue skies and creating some shadows over the home. And yeah, this is a pretty dark painting, pretty heavy. And I really felt a lot coming out of it. I was a bit disconnected from the actual emotion during it. I'm actually feeling more emotion now looking back at me painting it than I did while actually painting it. But it's incredible what this process can do for your inner world and how much you can communicate visually through this process. Please make sure that you're taking care of yourself through your process, that you're drinking water, that you're moving your body if you need to. I'm starting in now with that cherry tree, and I am adding in these pink petals that are quite the contrast from the fire and darkness that is taking up much of the painting. And so this cherry tree being the mask that covers the house, the mask that covers the flames and the loss and the grief, and what we do to try to protect ourselves from the reality of things that we've been through, and why we spend so much time repressing and hiding from it. What do we think would happen if we allowed ourselves to write about these things or to put this out into the world? What would happen? And I had mentioned earlier that I'd be afraid that people would be mad at me. And you know what? People have always been mad at me. My aunt and uncle both passed away mad at me. My mom's always mad at me. My dad's they're always mad at me because I speak up, because I refuse to look away. And so at the end of the day, if it's true to me and it feels good to me to put it out there, then I'm going to put it out there. And so you get to choose what you do with the fear. If you're afraid to write about a topic or paint about a topic or address something, you get to decide. You get to decide what you do with that fear. And that's what this whole process is about. That's why I started this, because I've really needed to organize my thoughts and my creativity. And Suleika's book is really helping me do that. I've only been through the one prompt with you, but the intro and the introduction and everything that she talks about and why she wrote the book, it really inspired the me that has always been drawn to journaling, and it inspired me to go even further with this practice of helping others access journaling in alternative ways, not just through writing, but through art and through expression. And I know there's a lot of artists out there. This is part of my inner critic, is like, everyone's doing this. Everyone's talking about journaling. There's other people doing this. What's special about you and why you do it? I don't really know yet. I don't know what's special about me. I don't know if I need to be special in order to create something, write a memoir about my experiences. And my vision for the memoir is very different than what I've seen done in a lot of ways. It's not just a traditional book that you read and open to close. It's going to be interactive. It's going to have a lot of different elements to it. It's going to be psychoeducational, but I still have this fear. And so here's how we address it. We make it visual. And so I'm going to take this painting and I'm going to use it as a catalyst for the next 100 days of exploration into my inner world. Okay, I went on for a while and I got lost in this narration, and I'm now here with you at the end of this journey, the end of this half hour. And if you are also at the end of your journey, if you've been creating along with me here, I want you to look at what you've done, and I want you to be proud of yourself. Be proud of yourself for being here. Be proud of yourself for showing up this way. Be proud of yourself for allowing yourself to be heard, even if it's just in a book, even if it's just your journal hearing you, even if it's just me in the comments. If you want to leave a comment and tell me a little bit about what came up during this process for you, either while listening or while actually doing it. So I'm creating my last little bit here, and it's these orange lily flowers. I had this moment where I was making the cherry blossoms on the tree, and I was thinking about all the flowers my mom had planted over the years at the house, giving this illusion of this happy home. And I thought about these orange lilies that were there when we first bought the house. There were orange daylilies that were in the front gardens, and my mom had a visceral reaction to these orange lilies. She ripped them out, and I just remember there being this big, long conversation about these awful orange lilies. And we ripped them out. I remember we threw them in the woods and the back, and they ended up coming back in the woods. And my mom just kind of being like, these lilies won't leave us alone. They follow us everywhere we go. And so it's kind of this final ode of bringing it back to the roots, bringing it back to what's been ripped out and destroyed, and replanting, regrowth, rebirth. Knowing that despite where you come from, you have the ability to bloom again. You have the ability to put things back the way that you wanted them. Because if I had a choice, I probably would have never ripped those orange lilies out. And I thought I hated the orange lilies because my mom hated the orange lilies. And it's funny because now in my new home here that we bought 5 years ago now, it's my dream home, and it had the orange lilies. It still has the orange lilies. And I am not ripping them out. I'm letting them grow. I'm letting them bloom, because my house, my home, the home that I built, is not on fire. It is built with warmth, but not fire. And so I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for being here. I'm proud of you for creating with me. If you've enjoyed this, please like, please comment, please subscribe. I'm really trying to create this YouTube channel into something, but I am not the most fancy YouTuber. I am not using the most fancy equipment. I am not editing this in the most fancy of ways. I'm just here sharing my process, sharing myself, sharing my thoughts, sharing what I know, what I've learned. And I really appreciate you for being here. So let's gear up for day 2. Let's think about, if you haven't already gotten a journal, what journal you're going to get. Try to have that same journal, that same pen, that same spot, that same time of day, and give yourself permission to show up. Give yourself permission to get into something just for you, just for you. This process is just for us. And if you don't have the time or the resources to actively engage in the challenge, and you just want to follow along as I engage in the challenge, then do that. Let that be what inspires you to eventually maybe take part. But for now, just be proud of yourself for being here, and take care of yourself after listening to this, after listening to me talk briefly about my own chaos and trauma. Take care of your body, maybe do a little wiggle, maybe squeeze yourself, give yourself a nice big hug and hold all of that back in. But let yourself express some physical movement after this, after you've been hunched over drawing or painting. Move your body. Thank you again for being here. Don't forget to date your entries so that you can look back and remember where you were at this time, how you were feeling, and Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate you all. I read every single comment, even though I hardly have time to respond to them all. And until next time, take care.